Hi, my name's Cheryl. I paid for a family reunion I wasn't even allowed to attend. They changed the date without telling me. Then my sister sent a message. Don't come. Well, bring you leftovers. She laughed. The whole family showed up. Without me. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part? They used my money, erased my name, and acted like I never existed. Have you ever realized too late that your family didn't forget you, they planned around you? Because that morning, I found out they all knew. I shut my laptop with a little more force than necessary. The office had thinned out for the day, and the hallway lights dimmed slightly as motion sensors stopped detecting anyone. I glanced at the clock, 6:37 p.m. It was the kind of hour where Texas skies deepened fast, slipping into that blue-gray stretch before dinner. I checked my phone again, instinctively refreshing the family group chat. Still quiet. Too quiet. Usually, by this point, Cressida would have sent some prep check photo her hairstyled, decorations half done, something curated. But nothing. 2 days out from the reunion. It fronted the cost for the Ridgewood rental weeks ago for $4,800, straight from my checking account. Sent it to Cressida with a simple message. Handled. Let me know if you need more. She just replied with a heart emoji. That was our usual rhythmy wiring money, her getting the spotlight. But now that silence didn't sit right. Something poked at me. I opened the calendar invite on my phone. Family Legacy Weekend, November 10th, Friday confirmed. I clicked into the booking confirmation from Ridgewood, same date. And yet, something felt misaligned. It wasn't until a random Facebook tag pinged my notifications that I spotted a post from my cousin May. Thursday night dinner kickoff. So excited to see everyone tomorrow. Tomorrow? My stomach dropped. I messaged her immediately. Wait, did the event move to Thursday? I thought it was Friday. She left it on read. Scrolling through the chat history, I saw it. Buried 3 weeks ago in a message from Cressida to a smaller group thread I apparently wasn't in. Final date, Thursday night, resort needs earlier start. But in the main group, nothing. No updates. My messages, can't wait to see you all Friday. Not a single soul corrected me. And then came the text. Cressida, in her usual tone that masked daggers with exclamation points. Don't come. We'll bring you leftovers. It's better that way. No explanation, no apology. Just that. I stared at it longer than I care to admit. That damned wink. It said everything she didn't feel like saying aloud. You're not welcome. You were never really part of this. You paid. That's enough. I didn't respond. What could I say that wouldn't sound small or defensive? I screenshotted it. Forwarded it to my work email. Sat in the silence of my one-bedroom apartment where no one had ever asked to hang a family photo. My first instinct was denial. Maybe she was joking. Maybe I'd missed a bigger plan. But it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like strategy. Like a family who wanted the money without the presents, the help without the reminder of who made it happen. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water I didn't drink, then walked back and opened my laptop again. I pulled up the receipt from Ridgewood. My name, Cheryl Gellhorn, stamped in bold. The one who secured the weekend, the menu, the floral deposits. All of it. Mine. Yet I wasn't invited to stand inside the place I built. How many times had I been the buffer? The one who made the family look put together from a distance? Birthdays, anniversaries, emergencies, they all had my name in the fine print, and never once in the headline. When did I become so convenient they forgot I was still a person? The anger didn't come in a roar. It came like a tide, steady and quiet, wrapping around my ankles and pulling me towards something colder. I didn't call her. I didn't call anyone. I didn't rage post or send a furious voice memo. Instead, I opened a folder on my desktop. I named it They Knew. Inside it, I dropped the screenshot. Then the Ridgewood receipt. Then the email where she accepted the funds. I knew what it looked like, obsessive, maybe. But when you're erased often enough, you start building proof that you existed. I thought of the phrase my mother once used on me, years ago, after I questioned why Cressida never paid me back for a 6-month rent spot. Let it go. Don't keep score. We're family. And maybe that was the problem. I hadn't been keeping score, I'd been keeping records. That night, I ate cereal straight from the box. No appetite. I reread her message once more before turning off the lights. They didn't just forget me. They planned around me. That night, I didn't sleep. I drafted a letter that made silence into a sound they couldn't ignore. The first file I labeled was proof of payment. The second, pattern of disrespect. I woke up still in yesterday's clothes. The room smelled like untouched tea and stale air. The message from Cressida sat like a splinter in my brain, blunt, casual, coded in condescension. I didn't open my phone right away. I opened my laptop. The They Knew folder stared back at me, newly created, nearly empty. I clicked into it and dragged over the receipt from Ridgewood. Proof. Then another ping-on email notification from Ridgewood's concierge, thanking Ms. Morell for coordinating the event. I exhaled through my nose, not even surprised. It was always Cressida who got the headline. Out of reflex, I tapped into the family group chat. It was gone. Vanished from my list. For a second, I thought it was a glitch. Then I scrolled through my archived messages. Nothing. I typed in family legacy. No matches. I had been removed. I opened Instagram. My hands shook, just slightly, when I searched Cressida's handle. Her stories were still active. I tapped the first bubble. There they were. Everyone. The Ridgewood event space glowing with fairy lights and white linens. A long table sat under strings of hanging bulbs, wine glasses reflecting soft gold. People I knew, people I had paid for, smiling like nothing was wrong. Then the camera panned across a banner above the dessert table. Thank you, Cressida. My name wasn't anywhere. Not even on a guest list. It didn't hurt, it scorched. The next story was worse. A reel, polished with background music and filters, flipping through old family photos. One picture me, at maybe 6 years old, with front teeth missing and cake on my cheek, was warped with a cartoon lens and a caption. She funded the vibe, but couldn't make the cut. The laugh-crying emoji broke me more than the words did. The view count climbed in real time as I watched. Then came the comments. So classy, Cressida. Family first. This setup is Pinterest perfect buried between the praise, was one from my dad's coworker's wife. Wait, where's Cheryl? A reply followed almost instantly. Long story, I didn't react. Not allowed. I just leaned back on the couch and stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the report button. I didn't click it. Let them have their curated memory. Let them have the narrative. Because this time, I had the receipts. I remembered another moment years ago. A family dinner at an overpriced steakhouse. It quietly covered the bill, sliding my card across the table without fanfare. Cressida had stood up and raised her glass. To us, she'd said, voice warm and performative. To staying together no matter what. She didn't mention who had paid. No one did. They clinked glasses, smiled for photos, and posted about how close our family was. It convinced myself not to mind. Told myself that being the reliable one meant not needing the spotlight. But this wasn't oversight. This was erasure intentional and digital. I started downloading the stories. Every photo, every reel, every comment. I screenshotted the banner, the caption, the comment thread. I pasted each one into a new document and named it Reunion Public Archive. Then I added it to the folder. They'd removed me from the room, but they hadn't expected I'd be watching from the doorway. I wasn't going to argue or beg to be let in. I wasn't going to ask why. I wasn't going to text, did I do something wrong? That chapter was over. I whispered, barely audible over the buzz of my laptop fan. You don't get to humiliate me on camera and still cash my check. The receptionist hesitated, then her voice landed like a stone. The original booking was under Cheryl Gellhorn, but it was updated to Cressida Morell 2 days ago. That sentence stayed with me the rest of the day, long after I left the venue. Friday afternoon settled in with a deceptive calm, the kind that made you feel like the world had finally exhaled. But inside me, a storm. I sat curled near the living room window, My laptop perched on one thigh. The coffee I had made hours ago, now a bitter pool in a chipped mug. The inbox blinked, a new message. Subject: Thank you from the Ridgewood event team. I clicked without thinking. My breath paused. Dear Ms. Cressida Morrill, we appreciate your generous coordination of last night's legacy celebration. It was a joy to host such a meaningful gathering. Your leadership made the event a true success. We look forward to working with you again. I read it once, then again, and again. The words didn't change. The praise stood tall. They believed she had organized it, that she had paid, that the applause, the floral arrangements, the catered hors d'oeuvres, the sparkling water on ice were hers to claim. Attached to the email was the invoice. My signature still sat neatly at the bottom, but the billing section, rewritten. My name was gone. Hers was now printed in clean Helvetica, Cressida Morrill. It wasn't credit card fraud. No. This wasn't financial theft in the traditional sense. It was deeper, more personal, a theft of presence, a swap of visibility, the kind of erasure that makes people question their own memory of being there. I stared at the screen until the glare felt like it was burning through my eyes. Then, something old and familiar came back to me plaque. 2 years ago, a charity dinner for a women's shelter. Cressida had hosted it, yes, but I had quietly covered over 70% of the fundraising shortfall in the final week. I had wired $2,500 without a single call or announcement. That night, she walked on stage and received a framed certificate in honor of Cressida Morrill Advocate. Leader, donor, no mention of me. Not even a nod. Back then, I told myself, it's not about recognition, but sitting here now, I had to wonder, should it have been? Almost on autopilot, I opened Instagram. There she was again. Cressida, a new post, a carousel of professionally lit photos from last week's so-called wellness gala in Dallas. I recognized the soft pink linens, the string lights, the smiling women in white. My name wasn't tagged anywhere, but my budget sure had been. Her caption? Grateful to give back and celebrate sisterhood. Funding this was a dream come true. Legacy built, or women's voices, saw give back glow. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just saved the post, dragged it into a folder on my desktop I had labeled long ago. They knew. Her smile in the final photo so polished, so effortless, looked like a borrowed mask. The comments were worse. You're the heart of your family, Cressida. Inspiring as always. You really walk the walk, girl. It felt like watching someone parade around in my skin. I opened my notes app and typed with trembling thumbs. You used my name to pay your taxes. You used my money to throw your party. Now you use my silence to polish your image. The blinking cursor waited. I hovered over the share icon, but something in me paused. She wouldn't confess. She'd just redirect. They'd twist it, tell me I was being petty. Always taking things too personally, Cheryl. So instead, I took a screenshot of the note, saved it under a new folder on my desktop, unsent because they'd spin it. That night, I stayed off social media. No scrolling, no checking the family group chat, no calls to my parents, who I already knew wouldn't ask how I was feeling. Instead, I opened a new folder titled Proof of Transfer and began uploading every document I had: bank records, receipts, date-stamped wire transfers tied to the gala. Then another, event discrepancies. Into that one, I filed the altered PDF invoice, the thank you email to her, the Instagram screenshots, and my original booking confirmation. I wasn't making noise. I was collecting weight. For years, I let them tell the story. Let them claim I was just generous, not interested in attention, comfortable in the background. But the truth is, generosity doesn't mean erasure, and staying silent doesn't mean consent. If Cressida needed my money to appear noble, maybe I needed the truth to look unapologetically unforgiving. And this time, I wasn't going to ask permission to exist. I hadn't cried in days. That used to feel like strength, like resilience. Like maybe I was finally past the point where they could reach in and twist something inside me. But now, it just felt vacant. It meant I'd entered a different phase entirely, one where I wasn't even reacting anymore. Just collecting. Just cataloging. My body moved, my voice answered when needed, but my mind was busy filing moments into categories. Betrayal, omission, confirmation. By late Saturday afternoon, the silence around me grew louder than I could handle. ID cleaned the same counter twice, ignored 3 text messages, and stared at a half-finished bowl of oatmeal that had gone cold hours ago. Eventually, I picked up the phone and called my mother. She answered on the second ring, already armed with the voice she reserved for performances, the polished, airy tone she used with neighbors, at fundraisers, or when she needed something to sound like love. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, drawing out the syllables like they were warm honey. "How are you holding up?" I didn't indulge her act. "I just want to ask you something directly," I said, my tone flat. "Did you all know I wasn't coming to the reunion?" There was a pauseless, then a second, but I felt it hit like a cold wind. Her answer came too smooth, too practiced. "Let's not make this bigger than it is. You're overthinking again. The weekend was lovely. It wasn't about leaving you out." "Then what was it about?" "Family has to move on, Cheryl, and honestly, you know how emotional your sister gets. She just didn't want any tension." So there it was. I wasn't excluded because he'd done something wrong. I was excluded because my presence was tension. My existence complicated their narrative. I was the knot in the ribbon they were trying to tie around their perfectly curated family moments. "And no one thought to correct the date?" I asked. "Even after I sent confirmations? Twice?" Another silence. I already knew the answer, but I needed to hear what excuse she'd reach for. Things were moving fast. I'm sure it wasn't personal. "Can we let it rest now?" That sentence rang in my head like a bell. Can we let it rest now? Translation: Can you stop making us uncomfortable with your awareness? That was the moment I knew this wasn't a miscommunication. It wasn't a scheduling error. It was a quiet, mutual agreement, one no one had to say aloud. I was the element they had voted, unanimously and passively, to subtract. After the call, I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where, just a few weeks earlier, I had wired money for the event. The irony wasn't lost on me. My name was on the invoice, but not the guest list. My phone buzzed. A text from my dad's number lit up the screen. Glad she stayed out of it. Elian was finally relaxed. Then, seconds later, another message. This weekend would have been a mess if she came. They meant to send those to someone else. I sat still, didn't breathe for a moment. The kind of stillness where your body feels too heavy to move, and your lungs forget their function. I wasn't angry, not yet. That would come later. In that moment, I was hollowed out. They weren't just okay with me being absent. They were grateful. Out of instinct, I opened Instagram, searched for Cressida's profile again. This time, I wasn't looking at decorations or outfits. I was hunting for faces, my parents' faces. My mother clapping as the cake was cut. My father mid-toast, eyes glassy, voice confident. To balance, to peace. To the people who show up with love. No one asked where I was. No one seemed to notice I wasn't there. It was as if I had already been edited out of the story, like it'd been photoshopped out of the family album, while the party continued seamlessly. I closed the app. Opened my laptop. A blank document stared back at me. I titled it, Pattern of Language. And I started typing. Let's not make this bigger than it is. You're overthinking again. She's too emotional. Glad she stayed out of it. This weekend would have been a mess if she came. I copied and pasted each quote. These weren't just careless remarks. They were coordinated patterns, recitations of the same themes, repeated over years in slightly different forms. Evidence, not accidents. Patterns, not slips. I didn't respond to my dad's messages. I didn't call my mother back. What could I possibly say that they hadn't already dismissed before I even spoke? Instead, I opened the voice memo from our call, downloaded it, dragged it into a folder I'd quietly labeled. They knew. There would be no confrontation, no dramatic showdowns, just quiet documentation. I wasn't collecting these receipts to win a fight. I was collecting them because I was done pretending they didn't exist. They wanted peace? Fine, they could have it. In the version of our family, where I was the problem that solved itself by vanishing. If silence was the story they chose, then documentation would be mine. And this time, I wouldn't be edited out. Sunday morning arrived not with ease, but with edge. The sunlight didn't spill into my apartment. It stabbed through the blinds, laying hard shadows across the floor, as if to say, "You're not done yet." It wasn't a morning built for rest. It was a morning that demanded answers. I sat at my desk with a lukewarm cup of coffee, sorting through old emails, automated alerts, newsletters I never read, receipts from dinners I didn't enjoy. A low hum of irritation had been simmering inside me for days, and I thought perhaps clearing out digital clutter might help clear my mind. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. Local area code. I hesitated, then picked up. "Good morning," a bright but brittle voice said. "This is Casey from Ridgewood Resort. We're following up regarding last Thursday's event. Ms. Morell mentioned you may want a final guest usage report and catering breakdown." I blinked. "Ms. Morell?" "I'm sorry," I said slowly, "but I made that reservation." There was a pause, a sharp inhale, then a softer exhale, one laced with worry. "Apologies," Casey said. "Our files show the original reservation was under Cheryl Gellhorn, but the hosting contact and authorization forms were updated to Ms. Cressida Morell 48 hours before the event." I stared at the screen like it had betrayed me. "Did the payment method change?" I asked, my voice steady but colder now. "No, Mom. The payment was charged to the card ending in 48 to 19. Still under your name." "Of course it was." I thanked her, if you could call the flat word I offered thanks. Then I ended the call and immediately sent a formal request for all written correspondence involving the event, every message, every update, every staff memo that mentioned my name or Cressida's. 20 minutes later, they arrived. I opened the PDF bundle and scanned quickly, eyes catching on one particular subject line: update to guest record. Her email was calculated, charming in that predatory way only Cressida could manage. She hadn't asked, she'd informed. "My sister won't be attending. For liability reasons, please ensure my name is listed as the event host. She has given full consent." Consent. A lie. Typed in Arial 12-point font, sent without hesitation. As casual as requesting sparkling water instead of still. As smooth as she'd always been. I started saving everything, dragged files into my desktop folder titled Event Discrepancies, renamed screenshots to include timestamps. I was no longer documenting a misunderstanding. I was gathering proof of intent. And then it got worse. A text pinged on my phone, not an email this time, a number I didn't recognize. Just a plain gray bubble. "I'm not supposed to say this." Then, a moment later, the sender identified themselves. Elian. The sad face emoji nearly broke me. Not because of how childish it was, but because it wasn't filtered. Children rarely hide their truth well, and sometimes that's the only truth left. But everyone knew. "Mommy said not to tell you." "I'm sorry." I felt like I'd been gut-punched by a whisper. It didn't knock the air out of me, but it reached places no shout ever could. My hand froze. My breathing stalled. I didn't reply. I just placed the phone face down on the desk, carefully, like setting down a glass you know is already cracked. Then I opened a new Word document. I titled it Voices Ignored, and typed in the message from Elian, including the timestamp, the phone number, and the contact name. Next, I created a second folder on my drive, Collusion by Silence. It was a phrase that had haunted me for months without having the vocabulary. Now I had both. This wasn't some family drama gone wrong. It wasn't about oversight or tension. It was a plan. A layered, deliberate decision to erase me not with rage, but with paperwork, with politeness, with silence. I stood up slowly, looking around my living room. The framed photos, the receipts pinned to the board by the door, the scrapbook of RSVP lists, all of it had been a record of love, effort, hope. Now they were evidence, not of crime, but of erasure. Every time they had crossed out my name and inserted hers, every phone call I hadn't gotten, every thank you that never came, it wasn't a slip. It was a signature move. That night, I didn't cry. I opened a blank document titled Formal Statement Draft Internal Use Only. I wasn't ready to send it to anyone, not yet. But I needed a place to start laying it all out: dates, quotes, names, intentions. I needed to have my own version of the truth written down, in case I was ever told again that I was imagining things. And as I typed, one line from Elian wouldn't leave my head. Mommy said not to tell you. That was all I needed to know. The adults had orchestrated the cover-up, but a child told the truth. And I would not forget that. I wanted to know where the line was between insult and impersonation, and how close they had come. I woke up to a doorbell. Not the chime of someone excited to see me, just the dull, practical buzz of a FedEx delivery. The box sat awkwardly on the doormat like it regretted being there. I brought it inside, unsealed the top, and unfolded the flaps. On top of the tissue paper was a note card. Thick stock, cream-colored, handwriting I knew too well. Wish you could have made it. We saved you something. Beneath it sat a cloth napkin, wrinkled, stained with what looked like wine. A plastic fork still wrapped in the paper ring that usually sat beside Buffett Schaefer's, and a miniature box of mints, half crushed. At the bottom was a name tag sticker with my name written in Sharpie folded in half. They'd mailed me leftovers. I didn't cry. I didn't throw it. I took out my phone and snapped a photo from directly above. Light neutral, no filter. Then I moved the box to the trash, pressing it down into the liner until the tissue paper crumpled audibly beneath my palm. The email from Ridgewood came a few hours later, automated, polite. Thank you, Ms. Cressida Morell, for your generosity in sponsoring the Legacy Luncheon. My stomach dropped, even though I expected it by now. Attached was a high-resolution PDF with a gold border, listing her as the sponsor. I checked the invoice number. It matched the one from my bank transfer. My money, my transaction ID. So I called. Not as a client, not as a curious guest. I called as the payer. The woman who answered at the events desk introduced herself as Lauren. I asked about the name change. She paused. Yes, she said cautiously. We received the payment from a Cheryl Gellhorn, but all signage and documentation on the day of the event were updated at the request of Ms. Morell. And that's allowed? I asked, voice steady. Someone can use another's payment and change the credited name without their consent. Only if they state shared authority, she replied. In this case, the email indicated that you had agreed. I asked for a copy of that message. When it arrived, there it was. Cheryl won't be joining us. She's asked me to take over the coordination and be listed accordingly. A full lie. Undiluted. I saved it all. I opened a new folder on my desktop titled Evidence of Erasure. Into it went the photo of the gift box, the receipt, the thank you letter, the email chain. I moved slowly, deliberately, like someone handling glassware in an earthquake. Later that evening, I sat at my desk and opened my journal. I gave this entry a name. No more witnesses, only records. I wrote until my fingers cramped, until the pen ink smudged across my palm. They kept my contributions and discarded my name. They want the checkbook, not the person. They want my silence, not my presence. It wasn't a tantrum, it was a filing. Then I opened my email and began drafting something with a different tone. More legal, more distant. It wasn't for sending, at least, not yet. But I wanted to see it on paper, to know that if I needed it, the case was ready. After dinner, I walked the trash outside. The air was still warm, unseasonably so for November. I stood by the bin for a moment, then turned around and went back inside. I retrieved the box, placed it on my dining table, took one more photo, this time with my finger pointing at the card. I renamed the image file Exhibit Saxe Psychological Undermining, JPG. Then I tossed the box a second time and didn't look back. They didn't just want me out of the room. They wanted me quiet, unacknowledged, bankrolling the version of family they could pose beside, while pretending I was too dramatic to be included. But the truth doesn't need volume, just records. You don't get to shame someone in a card and still call it kindness. It wasn't revenge. It was history, and I was just restoring my part in it. Tuesday morning, I sat in my kitchen with a black coffee gone cold and 36 pages of truth open on my screen. The file name was simple. They knew. It was cleaner than I expected. No colors, no bold fonts, just dates, emails, contracts, invoices, screenshots, and silence. At the top, I typed a subject line. For those who asked, here's what actually happened. I didn't write a greeting. I didn't ask for understanding. I attached the PDF, addressed it to my entire extended family, every person who'd reposted Cressida's highlight reel, every PR client listed on her LinkedIn bio, and a few others who used to say, "You're the good one." Before hitting send, I reread the subject line. I hovered over send, then clicked it. No hesitation. The response didn't come from the people I expected. 10 minutes in, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen since high school Trina. Her message read, "Just saw the doc. I always wondered why you were never in their family posts. Makes sense now." A second one came from a coworker, Julia, someone I barely spoke to at lunch. That hit harder than I thought it would. Thank you for not being silent. By noon, Cressida had gone quiet online. Her latest Instagram post, an inspirational quote in cursive about growth through grace, was turned off for comments. The caption had been edited. Some people air private matters for attention. Real ones know the truth. I didn't reply. She wanted to turn my evidence into a tantrum. Let her try. My phone buzzed again. Voicemail, my mother. "Cheryl, honey, please delete that file. This is hurting your sister's business. She's having a hard enough time with everything already. Not a word about the truth. Just concern about appearances." But then, a different email came in. From my Uncle Me Dad's brother, who'd said nothing during any of it. Not even at the funeral, when they left my name off the family flower arrangement card. It said simply, "Good." They needed to see it. I read that line 3 times. Later that evening, I made tea and sat on the balcony while the sun dipped behind the trees, casting gold light over the roof lines. I wasn't waiting for more responses. I wasn't refreshing inboxes or watching view counts. I just sat still, and in that silence, I whispered the words that had been sitting inside me for years. You taught me silence. I only mirrored it, but now you'll hear mine. They built a narrative and handed me a muzzle, but the quiet girl kept records, and today, she sent them out. The next morning, I changed my last name on every professional platform, quietly and completely. The air downtown felt too clean. I walked into the attorney's office with a folder tucked under my arm and a silence in my chest that was no longer grief, it was preparation. I didn't sit back when I spoke. I didn't fidget. I laid the contract on her desk. Ridgewood Resort. My payment. Cressida's name on the signage. She scanned it quickly, flipping to the back. "You signed this," she confirmed. "And you paid?" "Yes." "And this," she held up the updated version, "was submitted without your consent?" "Correct." 2 days before the event. She told them I wasn't coming. That she was the new host. The attorney looked up. She impersonated a financial contributor. "That crosses into civil territory. You're not just being erased, you were replaced." I didn't ask for justice. I asked for a copy of her assessment. Something official. Something that turned my emotion into documentation. That afternoon, I went home and opened my 2021 tax folders. In one spreadsheet, hidden beneath March statements, was the wire transfer. $18,200. The memo read, "Emergency Cressida. IRS Leanne." I remembered the call like it had just happened. Cressida sobbing in her salon office, red lipstick smeared across her palm from wiping her face, begging me not to let her license be suspended. She'd missed a series of tax deadlines. No one else could help. "I'll pay you back," she'd said. She never did, and I never brought it up. Until now. I printed the transfer receipt and slipped it into a clear plastic folder. The label read, Exhibit 2021, Personal Financial Assistance .pdf. My phone buzzed around 6:45. Cressida's name lit up my screen, not a call. A voice memo. I played it through once. Her tone was syrupy at first, then sharp. You've always needed to feel superior. That's why you keep score. You didn't help out of love. You helped so you could hold it over me. Maybe you should thank me. People finally see you now. I didn't flinch. I saved the file, named it Audio Exhibit, SHA-16B, dragged it into the folder marked Unpaid Debts and Public Humiliation. My calm unnerved even me. I didn't answer. Instead, I printed one last letter. A single page, typed, straightforward. You no longer have permission to speak, act, or represent anything using my name, resources, or personal history. Any such actions moving forward will be considered identity misrepresentation and pursued accordingly. At the bottom, I attached a notarized copy of the 2021 bank wire. I signed it with a pen that hadn't left my desk drawer in 2 years. The next morning, I had it hand-delivered. No email, no subject line, no warning. I didn't imagine her opening it. I didn't indulge that fantasy. I had no need to see her face when it landed. Instead, I brewed tea, sat on my back porch, scanned the leaves trembling in the wind, and let myself breathe. Some receipts don't fade. They age into evidence. That night, I didn't post anything. No farewell speech, no cryptic quotes, no final mic drop. I simply removed every digital tag, mention, or trace that connected me to their legacy, their version of me. The one they edited, cropped, and controlled. I deleted it like you would a corrupted file. Not out of anger, but clarity. That chapter was over, and I no longer needed to explain the ending. 2 months had passed since I mailed the letter, the one that laid everything bare. I hadn't heard a single word in return. Not from Cressida, not from my parents, not even from the distant relatives who used to call every Sunday asking if I'd be attending this or that family function. Their silence, once heavy and sharp, had lost its edge. It was just silence now. Clean, uncluttered, like a cleared field after the snow melts. Vermont helped. The air moved slower here. It didn't rush to justify itself. My apartment was modest second floor above a cozy bookstore cafe, run by a retired couple who asked for nothing but kindness and responded with fresh scones and shared laughter. I had a single shelf of books, a pothos that thrived on neglect, and a mailbox labeled in neat black letters. Cheryl Elaine. I had dropped the surname the way you drop an overworn coat, not because I was hiding, but because I was finally choosing what name would sit at the top of my mail, my life, my story. I wasn't carrying anyone else's legacy now, just mine. Around the holidays, something unexpected happened. The first card arrived, then 3 more. All handwritten, all from cousins. Not a word from Cressida, nothing from Lenora. But one envelope stood out light blue, silver ink, the kind you buy in a clearance pack. Inside was a single line, written in even cursive. Thank you for telling the truth. It gave the rest of us permission. I read it 3 times. Then I pinned it to the fridge, right next to a black and white drawing by Elian. A stick figure holding a mug, with Aunt M scribbled underneath in crayon. Sometimes, I still found myself checking my voicemail. Not because I was hoping for anything, but out of sheer habit. I listened to Cressida's last message again one afternoon, just to see if it still cut. It didn't. I heard her voice the way you'd listen to a recording in a museum exhibit, detached, historical. You've always needed to feel superior. Delete. Closure didn't come with confrontation. It didn't roar in like some satisfying movie ending. It whispered in quietly when I realized I no longer needed an apology with an expiration date. I didn't need to be proven right. I just needed to walk away without dragging their shadows behind me. Then, out of nowhere, a letter arrived. It was handwritten in pencil on folded notebook paper. The return address read, Elian Kroll, CEO, Jeanette. Friend's mom. The handwriting was young but careful. I still remember how you always brought me mint tea. I hope you're happy. Tucked inside was a small drawing of a lemon slice floating in a teacup, held in place by a paperclip. I teared up, not because it broke me, but because even after everything, someone small remembered the good parts, the quiet, gentle, honest ones, the ones that mattered. I wrote back the same day, I am. And I hope you'll always tell the truth, even when the adults don't. There were still echoes. A certain song on the radio, the smell of cinnamon, the way the light slanted across the kitchen table in the late afternoon. But those moments didn't pull me back anymore. They brushed past like wind through open windows. I noticed them, then let them go. Weeks later, I signed up as a mentor for a small business program at the local community center. The room was filled with dreamers people hoping to start bakeries, cleaning services, mobile pet spas, and flower trucks. They didn't care what my last name used to be. They cared that I showed up, that I listened, that I had stories and structure and sincerity to offer. One woman, early 40s, chipped red nail polish, and a leather-bound planner paused midway through her pitch and asked, "Did you ever work in events before? You seem like someone who knows how to hold a room." I smiled not at her, but at how far I had come. "No," I said, "but I've seen exactly how not to run one." And in that moment, I didn't feel bitterness. I felt whole. I used to fight for a seat at their table. I gave them chairs, linen napkins, centerpieces, and still they called me an afterthought. So I built my own room. And this time, I left the door open only for those who knock. Sometimes healing doesn't come with a loud declaration. It comes quietly when you stop chasing closure and start choosing yourself. I spent years believing that love meant tolerance, that loyalty required silence. But silence can become a permission slip for people to erase you while smiling in your direction. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Your peace is not a gift you owe anyone who profits from your absence. Walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Drawing a boundary isn't cruelty, it's clarity. And telling the truth, even when your voice shakes, is not an act of rebellion. It's an act of remembering that you matter, even when they pretend you don't. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from people who refuse to see your worth? Have you ever been the one left out of the picture, even though you were the one who held the frame? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story touched something in you. Or tell me where you're watching from, I'd love to know. If this story wasn't for you, I still want to hear your thoughts. What made you stay through to the end? And hey, if you found even a sliver of truth in this story, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. We've got more stories coming on that remind you you're not alone, and that your voice, your name, your presence matter more than they ever told you.